Hello, my name is Kelsey LeBay. I am one of two academic sports specialists with International Services. Today, we will discuss navigating a new environment, or better known as communication, one of the most essential employment skills in Canada. When joining the workforce, all students have certain challenges, whether it is limited paid work experience, limited career-related experience, or even a lack of a professional network. All students experience common barriers and may lack certain employability skills. One of the skills that is considered important to Canadian employers is communication. Communicating across cultures is challenging. Although domestic students also must communicate effectively, it is important for international students to be aware because they may not know what is expected in the Canadian workforce. When employers look at potential employees, they want to ensure that they can hire someone who has the ability to communicate with others well in their company. For example, in Canada, it is typically expected that you shake hands when you meet someone new, wait until someone finishes talking to respond, and to use small talk to form relationships. Furthermore, individuals value their personal space, and so when speaking, try to keep approximately 2 feet or an arm's length apart between each other. In contrast, other cultures might expect you to bow or to kiss cheeks when you meet someone new, interrupt others as they speak to show your point, and to not show emotion when in a meeting or presentation. The key is to familiarize yourself with what is expected in the country you intend to work in so as to avoid any communication conflicts. Communication skills are essential when working with others. Within communication skills are sub-skills like verbal and nonverbal communication, industry jargon, and small talk. The first topic we will discuss is verbal communication, or the words that may be expressed to others in either speech or writing. Whether you are passing people in the hallway or arriving at work in the morning, verbal communication is the first way you can build a relationship with someone, even by using simple phrases such as hello or good morning. These common courtesies extend to all positions in the workplace and are expected between individuals. In speech, it is important to remember that you should focus on effective speaking, such as choosing the right words and being aware of your volume and pace. Furthermore, asking questions is a great way to practice effective speaking, as you can obtain clarification, reach out if you need any help, and even show others that you're interested and want to know more. Lastly, empathizing with others is also a great strategy to use when listening and speaking. It allows you to attempt to understand the point of view of your coworkers, and it helps you avoid conflicts. For example, if someone had expressed a dislike for using certain words because they offend them, you can be aware of that and avoid using those words when communicating with them and around them in the future. In writing, on the other hand, it is important to remember that you do not have the benefit of visual cues or immediate verbal feedback. Therefore, you need to be as clear as possible, sticking to simple language and including concrete, specific information. Also, be sure to keep your tone as professional as possible in emails and in writing in general, blending varying degrees of formality and friendliness, and ensuring that your grammar and punctuation are correct. Many employers will often communicate via email, and so you want to ensure that you convey a professional tone. Not only will correct grammar avoid others thinking that you don't know English well, but it can also avoid miscommunication and misunderstandings. It only takes one word to change the entire meaning of a sentence. One common example of verbal communication in Canada is that at work, it is expected that you speak up and ask clarifying questions if you don't know or understand what is expected of you. If you end up doing the wrong thing or not completing a task correctly, it is not acceptable to hear the reply, "I don't know." In the end, this is part of taking responsibility for your job and showing that you can take initiative. You may ask, why is verbal communication important? First, it can be used to correct wrong and bring clarity. When communicating, it is difficult to avoid conflict and misunderstandings. If you made a mistake or feel that someone misunderstood you, having the ability to communicate verbally, either by explaining your reasonings or simply saying you are sorry, has a lot of power and value in the workplace. Second, it can be used to persuade someone. If you're working together with others and need to brainstorm ideas, it is always useful to have the ability to persuade others that your ideas are good. This can include providing evidence or communicating thinking about a well-rounded perspective. You may say, "I can see your point of view, but I think this might work better for all of us, and this is why." Third, it can be used to create relationships. When you're new at the workplace, in Canada, the best thing you can do is to create relationships with your coworkers. You'll be working together and might need each other's help at some point, and so by developing relationships with others, you ensure that you can get to know them and learn how everyone can best work together. Furthermore, it is expected that you'll be present during social situations. By not being present, it presents ideas that you do not like your coworkers and that you do not care. Fourth, verbal communication allows you to increase productivity and share ideas. Without proper communication or getting the message across to your team members, it would be impossible to get maximum output. If you're able to share your ideas efficiently and keep the channel of communication open, you are sure to get more done. Who knows? Someone else might have the one idea that really helps you finish a task or project. Lastly, verbal communication can increase job satisfaction and give motivation. If you're able to communicate well with others and work through any miscommunications, you will naturally be happier in your job. Furthermore, if you can communicate effectively with your supervisors, you're more likely to feel empowered and that you have contributed something good for your company. When you've done a good job, your supervisor praises you, which motivates you to keep working hard and do well. All this stems back to communication. If you can verbally communicate well with others in the workplace, you will add value to your job, your workplace, and to yourself. A really skilled communicator not only takes in what has been said, but also will hear what has not been said. Sometimes what is said is not exactly what is meant. While this is not always the case, it is important to be able to distinguish when you should take things literally or not. Reading between the lines is one way to do so. This skill takes into consideration what we actually said and how the context of the situation may influence what wasn't said but inferred. To help us better understand what it means to read between the lines, let's look at a few examples that may occur in the workplace. For example, if you were in a meeting and your boss said, "This idea won't scale," this is a softened way to say, "I don't like this idea," and as such, you should probably not push it. Secondly, if you're discussing something with a coworker and they respond saying, "It is what it is," this usually means things are not going to change or that there is nothing we can do. Finally, if you're talking with your coworker and they mention, "I have a lot on my plate," they are telling you that they have more work or responsibilities than they are capable of completing at this time. This usually implies you should not add to their workload and perhaps even offer a helpful hand if your abilities allow you to do so. To help you decipher whether a message means more than what was said, it is important to pay close attention to not just what was said, but to the way in which it was said as well. Similarly, it is also important to consider gestures and nonverbal communication, as they can be signs of the tone of the message as well. One common example in Canada with regards to reading between the lines is that oftentimes people will use slang to communicate. Though slang will be heard in the workplace, it is better to be clear and straightforward in your speech and avoid using it. Just be aware that it exists and that if you are unsure about what it means, it is okay to ask. Along with verbal communication is the skill of nonverbal communication, or giving information to others without using words through auditory, visual, or tactile channels. In general, when starting a new job, it is best to be reserved and professional until you get a feel for what is normal in your workplace. It can be difficult to know what reserved and professional mean depending on the situation, and so it is best to wait and see what the other person does. For example, instead of shaking every person's hand when you meet them, wait to see if they extend a hand first. You will find that people in higher positions will likely be more formal in introductions, whereas people in lower positions will not. Just remember, when in doubt, use formal language. With nonverbal communication, you actually communicate quite a lot using your voice and body language. Your tone of voice, your speech rate and volume, and the rhythm, intonation, and stress in the sentences themselves all convey something to the listener. In particular, rhythm, intonation, and stress can make a huge difference between communicating successfully or causing misunderstandings, as the meaning of the sentences can change depending on where you put emphasis. It is important to be aware of how you come across verbally so as to avoid making the other person upset or confused in a conversation. Body language is equally as important, if not more important, when it comes to nonverbal communication. Your facial expressions, eye contact, gestures, and personal space all can have a serious impact on how you communicate. In Canada, facial expressions like smiling or frowning, gestures, and personal space are the three that will most likely make the most impact on the success of a conversation. Furthermore, direct eye contact shows that you are interested in paying attention, whereas if you avoid it, people may think you are unfriendly or untrustworthy. If you do not show emotions on your face, gesture too much, avoid giving eye contact, or do not give enough personal space, it might make others feel uncomfortable or distracted while you talk. Just like we said with verbal communication, nonverbal communication has an important role. First, it allows you to show agreement and disagreement. Often we expect to see nonverbal gestures such as a nod or a thumbs up rather than hearing the words themselves, especially if the person speaking is still talking or has a lot to say. Something as simple as moving your head can really help the speaker know that you are following what they say and that they can continue to talk without any miscommunication. Second, it can demonstrate engagement and interest. Along with showing agreement and disagreement is the idea that you want to show that you are engaged and interested in the conversation. Maintaining eye contact, nodding your head, paying attention to them in general, avoiding wandering eyes around the room, etc. These will make a huge difference in showing that you are engaged and interested in what is being said, especially if it is a conversation with your superior or someone important. Third, nonverbal communication can maintain relationships and show emotions. For example, if someone seems upset or mad, we would approach the conversation a lot differently than if someone began with a smile and a kind greeting. Each person has different ways of responding, but a general rule is to always approach a conversation with a smile, a positive tone of voice, and a straight posture. Most people in Canada expect to see a bit of emotion in a conversation and to have the other people react to what is said, either with an appropriate facial expression or by showing appropriate hand gestures. Fourth, it can aid in verbal communication. When we talk, we often need to use facial expressions and regular gestures to accompany our verbal speech and properly convey what we want. These forms of nonverbal communication can make all the difference in getting across what you need while also avoiding miscommunication. Lastly, nonverbal communication can maintain a happy work environment. The last thing you want to do is cause others to be unhappy because of something you might be doing. If they are unhappy, it might lead to you being unhappy as well. Some examples of this can mean giving people the personal space they need, following certain cultural expectations like shaking hands, and following the other suggestions that I've said previously. Another important aspect of navigating a new environment is to be aware of industry jargon. Industry jargon is defined as the technical terminology or characteristic idiom of a specific activity or group. For example, in the legal industry, this would include terms such as abscond and indictable offense. Alternatively, in the healthcare industry, this would include terms such as HMO and subsidized coverage. It is okay if you don't know the meaning of these specific words. However, it is important to be aware of the jargon for the industry you wish to pursue. Industry jargon can provide clarity as it is more precise. However, it is essential that they are used properly and under the right circumstances. If not, feelings of bewilderment, frustration, and boredom may arise. One common example in Canada is that if you use industry jargon in the workplace, your coworkers will not only share an understanding of what you mean, but they will also likely see you as being knowledgeable and reliable on certain tasks, since you can use the right language to describe them. Just be aware that industry jargon is different from slang and buzzwords, which should be avoided. Keeping that in mind, we will now review some of the most prominent do's and don'ts of industry jargon. In terms of do's, it is important you know your audience. If you're a doctor, speaking to a patient with medical terminology is not the best choice, as it reduces the likelihood of comprehension. Secondly, it is important you provide context. Industries introduce new terms all the time, so you can't always assume everyone knows what you're talking about, even if they are part of the group. Lastly, it is important for you to differentiate jargon from common idioms. In terms of don'ts, be careful to not overuse industry jargon. If you keep repeating the same term in several instances, it can become annoying to others, and may even indicate you don't fully grasp the word's meaning. On that note, never use industry jargon if you don't know what it means. Finally, be careful not to interchange slang as jargon. This is informal and unprofessional as it runs the risk of offending others in the workplace. The last aspect of navigating a new environment is mastering the art of small talk. Small talk is short conversations on neutral topics and is used to contact and connect with people. Small talk is essential in making a non-familiar relationship familiar. This is because people in Canada often enjoy talking about their lives and everyday topics. Small talk is positive interaction with the intent of building rapport with coworkers and developing and expanding your networks. By engaging in short conversations, you establish your reputation and level of expertise. Now, we will cover some tips mastering small talk. First, it is important to greet individuals appropriately. This means you should find a time that is suitable to initiate conversation. If you see someone concentrated at their desk, this is not the time. Secondly, upon engagement, it is important you are confident. A lot of people are scared to have a conversation with the new person. By showing confidence, you will foster feelings of ease and comfort. Similarly, in trying to promote feelings of comfort, it is important you are aware of your body language. For example, crossing your arms, like so, presents notions of being closed off and is not conducive to open communication, as it is often seen as unapproachable. Once engaged in conversation, make sure you give the person your undivided attention. You should never take out your phone, for example. If you're expecting a call, you should wait to initiate conversation. Finally, make sure you stick to interesting or common topics so that the conversation can flow easily. If you aren't confident in your language ability, one tip we can give you is to ask a question that will get a long response, one that is not a yes or no answer. This will give you a chance to have a conversation, but not be expected to talk all the time. And lastly, equally as important as contributing to conversation is listening carefully. It was previously mentioned that when initiating small talk, it is important to stick to interesting or common topics of discussion. This includes topics such as the weather, entertainment, which includes movies, music, books, and TV shows, sports, family life, news headings, and travel. As you may notice, all of these topics are things most people can relate to, and as such, easily engage in conversation about them. This gives you the chance to speak about your personal life if you so choose. While it is easy to share information about your personal life, just be cautious that you do not get too personal. One common example from Canada would be to talk about the weather. Most people from around the world find it funny that Canadians often bring up the weather, but it is one of the most common topics of discussion and an easy way to small talk. Examples could be, "This weather is crazy. It was cold yesterday and today I came in with an open jacket. I hope it stays warm. What do you think?" An example of conversation starters regarding the news could be, "What do you think about COVID-19 and social distancing?" Whereas an example involving sports would be, "That basketball game yesterday had me glued to my seat. What was your taste on the game?" As you can see from all examples, they end in a question, ensuring that the individual will respond in some manner. They also ask for a long answer rather than a yes or no, giving you a chance to receive more information. This is really useful starting point for topics that are generally accepted by the public. Just keep in mind that one general rule is to stay away from religion, salary, and politics, as they can be touchy subjects for certain people. Thank you for watching our mini lesson on communication in our video series. Stay tuned for the next video in the series, Collaboration and Leadership.